Last week we learned about writing queries across single tables using the select statement. And this week we're going to learn about writing queries that access information in multiple tables. So I'm going to start by launching SQL Server Management Studio under Microsoft SQL Server Tool 17, Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. And I'm going to connect to cisdbss.pcc.edu using SQL Server Authentication. The login will be 275 student and password is 275 student. So there's the database. I'm going to go ahead and create a new query file. And let's go ahead and save this as, let's save as documents. I'm going to call this week 3 joins. Now, for some reason, I think I created last week's example file as week 1. It should have been week 2, but whatever. Okay, so under databases, we've been working with the names database. So let's start with that one. And I'm going to go ahead and open the database in the Object Explorer as well. And we've been working with the view mostly, but this time we're going to work with the tables instead. So I'm going to just select top 50 star from name counts. Select top 50 star from names. Select top 50 star from year, gender, totals. So this is the actual data that's in the database. And then we're going to look at how this information fits together. So basically, the question is, if you wanted to write a query that accessed information in each of these tables, then how do the tables actually tie together? How do they connect up? And let's start with the name table. And so in name, we have the actual person's name, and we also have metaphone, which is a phonetic representation for the name, which is used for fuzzy name matching. And then we also have this third column, a name ID. Now, in this particular table, name ID is just a number that goes from 1 up to however many names that we have in the names table. And then let's look at the name counts table and see what we have there. So here's name counts. And what we have is a rank, which is the relative ranking of that name for a particular year, and a name count, which is how many times a name was given to a baby in a particular year, and a name ID. And finally, this last thing here, which is a year, gender, total ID. And we'll look at that in a minute. But let's look at the name ID. So you'll see the name ID here is 1, and that matches the name ID here, which is 1 as well. So name ID 1 is actually Mary with a metaphone MR. And so if we look at the information in both of these two tables together, we see that Mary with a metaphone MR had 58,187 babies who were named Mary, which was ranked number 1. And then we have this year, gender, total ID. So let's look at what's going on here. So if we look at the year, gender, total table, you'll see there's a year, gender, total ID, there's a year, there's a gender, and there's a total number of names that were registered for babies in that year for that gender. So for example, this says that in 1915, 983,874 female babies were registered with the Census Bureau. In 1915, 848,603 babies were registered with the Census Bureau who are male. And then 1916 female, 1916 male, 1917 female, and so on. And each of these year gender totals has a year gender total ID. So if we look back up here at the first row, we see that there were 58,000 babies named Mary who were registered in, and then we find the matching year gender total ID, and we see 1915 female out of 983,874. So if we put all that information together, we get female babies named Mary in 1915, Metaphone MR, 58,000 babies were named Mary out of 900 and some odd thousand total female babies in 1915. So that's how all the data fits together. Basically, we're taking information in one table and we're matching it to information in another table. That can be one column or it can be several columns. And then we can additionally match information in another column and match that to another table. So this one matches to connect name to name counts. This one matches to connect year gender total ID to this year gender total ID. So that's how the information fits together. Now let's see how to actually write a SQL statement that stitches these two tables together. And the basic keyword for doing that is join. So I'm going to say select top 50 star from, and let's just start, you can start with either table. I'm going to start with names. And now what I want to do, so in addition to the names table, I also want to use the name counts table. So I join names with name counts, and then I have to specify how the two tables get stitched together. So what has to match in one table with the other table? So in this case, it's going to be the name ID. Is it name ID? Yeah. Name ID equals, and then this thing here, which is FK name ID. And that's, and actually join that on that. So I missed a keyword. So I'm selecting 50 rows from names joined with name counts where the name ID matches the FK name ID from name counts. If I execute this query, so I get everything on this side up to Metaphone comes from the names table. Everything on this side, the right side, comes from name counts table. And then this column here has to match that column there. So you'll see there's a bunch of different Marys here at the top, and that's because there's going to end up being one for each year. So let's look at what's going on with this year gender total ID. The same way that I could take one table, add another table to it using join, this actually sort of gives me something that looks a lot like a table. So this thing can then be joined to yet another table using another join statement. So let's go ahead and add another join. Year gender totals on year gender total ID equals FK year gender total ID. And then if I execute this query, so on these three columns come from names, and then these columns come from name counts, and then these columns come from your gender totals. So this gives me all the information that I need to work with, and I can, for example, say where name equal Mark, and so it should be capital N there. And gender equals M, and year equals 1962. And if I execute this query, I get all the information for babies named Mark who were born in 1962 that were gender male. And I find that 2,943 babies were registered with the name Mark, out of 200 and actually, yeah, 2,068,945 total male babies in 1962. Now you'll notice there's some duplicated information here because this name ID from the names table matches this FK name ID from the name counts table, and then this FK year gender total ID from name counts matches year gender total ID from year gender totals. And so I might not want to return all of these columns here. I might want to just select, for example, let's select, and I should have tabbed this over to start with, but let's go for name, metaphone, rank, name count, year, gender, total. Like so. And then given this join, basically all the tables or all the select statements that I wrote on the names database last week using the all data view, I can also write now using the tables joined together directly.